Hello, good evening. So my name is Danielle Turchiacno. I'm from Variety. I'm a senior features editor in television, but no one's here to see me, so I'm gonna stop talking. The lady of the hour, Aliyah Royale, I wanna bring her out right away. She, obviously you know her as Jira Calder-Brennan. So we all just watched, well, I was backstage, but they all just watched you be very emotional in a couple of episodes of The Red Line. But before we dig too deeply into the show and what you had to do in order to find the character of Jira, I wanted to back up with you and talk a little bit more about you getting into the business, because this feels like one of the biggest projects you've had so far.
Oh, absolutely. This is definitely the biggest job I've ever had. My first major role, especially on a network television show. It really started in, I think, kind of like every other actor in school plays, theater plays. And then one day I went to my mom and I was like, I might be really good at this. I don't know for sure, but I might be able to make it $20 off of this. And that was back in Michigan, and she trusted it. And so I was 11 and I flew out here with my mom and started auditioning.
So what does that process look like when you're 11 and you're auditioning and you're trying to find representation? What did you guys have to do to find the people you needed to surround yourself with to succeed?
You know how when you're fresh, 18, and have you guys ever tried to get a car right out of adulthood, and they're like, but you need credit, and you're
right.
Can't get credit without you giving me a line of credit. It was that thing. You go to these agents and they're like, okay, but the resume, I need at least 10 projects, and you're like, but aren't you supposed, is that why you're here? Okay, it's fine. I'll go find them and then come back. So it was definitely that process of trying to find whatever student film would hire me and audition on LA Casting or Actors Access, and then go to these agents and go, I did it. I found projects. I promise you I'm in an acting class. Please send me out. That's how that happens.
So tell me a little bit more about acting class versus some of these projects. I mean, why do you feel it's important to take the classes even when you are working?
I think acting class is important in terms of being around your peers. I think you learn best by actually being on set and being around people doing what you want to do in a real life professional setting. But acting class was a safe space for me. It's the place where I was my most vulnerable before I was ever vulnerable on a show or on a film. And it helped me kind of create a level of just camaraderie with other people going through the same thing I was, because there is a lot of rejection, obviously, and being around people who understand that and who are just as sad as you are, it really helped in those circumstances.
Do you feel like you can use that? Because I mean, this is a very dramatic show, a very emotional role. Is some of what you're getting out of these classes and being around these people using that experience to fuel these roles?
Absolutely. When I first started studying with Tracy Martin, I was inexperienced, really. I didn't know much, and then I kind of was I'm just out here, I just want to work, I just want to have fun. There wasn't this business side of it, and being in those classes taught me the business side of it. It taught me everything I needed to learn in terms of having that tool belt for the craziest audition requests you might get, or when you're on set and the director's like, I see what you're doing, but do this, and it's a complete 180 of what you had planned for a character. Those acting classes are where you learn all the tricks to make sure you can maneuver yourself outside of the class.
So you mentioned the audition process. I do want to talk about the audition process for The Red Line. So first, walk us through what you knew of the show, how many scenes you had, what you knew of where Jira would go when you first got in there.
When the audition first came across my desk, it was the first pilot audition I got for 2018. And it was your typical, 2 scenes of sides. And one of the scenes I remember is the scene in which we're on this train platform in episode 1. And I'm like, it never would have happened to you. Let me meet my mom. And he's like, no. And that was the audition scene. And I remember getting through the first round with the casting director, Russell Scott, and being like, okay, this feels good, might get it, might not. Whenever you're in an audition, you gotta walk out you don't want this, it's not the way you're gonna pay rent. So you gotta be oh, if I get it, who cares? And then I got the call for the callback, and I went before Warner Brothers, and this is when I went before the director, Victoria Mahoney, and It was a much more intense audition. I don't know, for some reason, maybe it's because of what I do, but when there's more people in the room, I feel the need to perform more. And the emotions got super intense. And I remember the director, Victoria Mahoney, being like, Aliyah, you're doing great. Now pick up those sunglasses on the table right there. And I was like, okay, what do you want me to do with them? Like, I could juggle, or I don't know, what do you want me to do? And she's like, just hold them and do the scene again. And I don't know what it accessed in me, but for some reason, as I was doing the scene again, halfway through the scene, I had bent the sunglasses within my hands in half. And then at the very end of the scene, when he's like, no, you can't meet your mom, let's go home. And I go, no. I threw them at the casting director. I threw them straight at him, and thank God they landed at his feet. But I had the entire room speechless and also minorly terrified. And the director calls cut, and she's clapping. Victoria's just ecstatic about what she just saw, and I'm like, oh my God, whose sunglasses were those? They were the casting director's sunglasses. Guys, I was like, if I don't get this role, I will understand why. I'll have no questions. And somehow I still got it. So that was great.
But at the same time, I mean, that's one very specific scene that sets up what's to come. It doesn't really tell you a lot, if anything, about what is literally going to be asked of you.
Absolutely. No, as soon as I got the official, I mean, I had like the pilot script, but that changes about 20 times before you actually go shoot it. So everything was coming in, everything was going out, and I had no idea what Jira would become.
So what did you need from your scene partners, from the writers, from people like Victoria when they're directing, to kind of fill you in as you went so that you could do it?
Right. No, I genuinely liked the element of surprise. I didn't want to know what the script was until the official one came out, because you get blue draft, green draft, whatever, and I didn't read it until we got to either golden rod, I think is what it's called, or the last one right before you go shoot, because it'll change at least 20 times before you shoot it. So I didn't want to get attached to a scene and then them take it out and be like, oh, but that was my one scene, So I really like the idea of surprise, especially when you know you're going to do 8 episodes of this. And just, I think a really important part of acting and being present in a scene is the spontaneity of it. And if you know everything that's going to happen, then it's boring. The job gets really boring.
Yeah. The scene you were talking about in the audition was obviously ended up being with Noah Wyle, who plays one of your dads on the show. So how much time did you guys have to kind of find their relationship, find who they were before this tragedy changed them?
30 seconds, I think, maybe.
Did you ever audition against him?
No, I didn't. There was no chemistry route or anything. We were really jumping in with just cold feet. And I met him maybe 2 minutes before we did the official table read in front of CBS, and they threw us in a room together and were like, become father and daughter. And we were like, yeah, because that's my job. And we did it. It came out really authentic. And the good thing is we're in this series, we're not buddy or with that very nurtured relationship at this point. We're at crossroads and we're at different ends of the spectrum. So having that distance between us and not needing to be best friends immediately was extremely helpful.
Okay. So did you feel like you worked differently with him then later as the series went on, when the closeness did start to come back?
Behind the scenes, Noah's very fatherly. He was very much a paternal figure, and as the scenes went on and we did get closer in the series, it felt very natural because we got closer in real life. Mm-hmm. So it was natural progression. Mm-hmm.
How do you feel like, if at all, those kind of bonds that you build as the show goes on, when the cameras roll, alter?
I think behind the scenes, you know each other as actors, and there's a level of camaraderie there. But when the camera starts rolling and the director calls action, as Noah would say, you sort of get into the ring. You start throwing punches, and you start, heavy hitting in terms of really going to those really deep emotional places that we go on the show, especially with a show like this. behind the scenes was very lighthearted, but as soon as this camera started rolling, we had to immediately tap into the most vulnerable parts of ourselves, and that was a huge contrast.
I mean, that is something that obviously for everyone who just watched these episodes, even if you haven't watched the whole series, you get very quickly is just you go to some really emotional, raw places. I would imagine you can't stay there too long or you become a different person.
Absolutely.
Did you find that you were asking things of your co-stars, of your directors, to be able to come in and out of a certain headspace?
The only thing for me particularly in terms of being able to suddenly be vulnerable in front of 200 people on set and then millions of people later on, I needed time alone. I think we are a different version of ourselves when we're isolated. And with Noah telling dad jokes the entire time behind the scenes, and then the woman who plays my mother, Emmy Otzi, also being a very maternal figure, there was just a lot of love going on behind the scenes that when I needed to be in Jira's headspace, I was like, love y'all, bye, for like 10 minutes before I knew we were going to shoot. I just made sure I was by myself. Maybe I'd put in my headphones. Like one of my songs that got me through the audition where I was able to, chuck those sunglasses. It was Easy by the Commodores. Oh, wow. That song puts me so deep in the feels. And like I'd put on my headphones and I'd play that song and then I'd go shoot.
So looking at some of, not just the 2 episodes they watched, across the board, the series, when you look at like what you feel is the most challenging for you emotionally, scene-wise, what do you feel like that is now looking back on having done the entire project?
Being honest. I think when you're in a dramatic series, especially one that's on the heavier side, you don't want to pigeonhole yourself and get stuck in this hole of I gotta scream and I gotta yell and I gotta get angry and then I gotta cry like that perfect Law and Order SVU 2 tears right here because you think like I gotta do all this stuff and that's not it. The good thing about Erica and Caitlin, our writers, is that they came at us with a very grounded script. The words were there. All we had to do was say them. And as long as we said them grounded and with the most honest version of ourselves, we'd be fine.
And I mean, just from a production standpoint, like you guys are shooting actually in Chicago. It looked very cold. There's crowds, there's noise, like you're on the real train platform. How does that stuff affect your process? I mean, are there distractions? What do you do to kind of shut that all out and perform?
I think I had the pressure of, this is my first real job, don't mess it up. So I didn't get any distractions. Okay. I was headfirst in this thing the entire time. But I do remember I think it was like 15 degrees on the day that we shot the train platform scene. It was 3 a.m. and it was the worst feeling in the world. They give you these things called like hot hands. And they don't work past 20 minutes.
Okay. What is that?
It's like activated charcoal, I think, is what it is. So as soon as you open it and it hits oxygen, it gets really, really hot. And if you put it on your skin, it does get hot. So you put it in your pockets and your shoes. And I think at a certain temperature decrease, it doesn't work. Because at 15 degrees, I don't remember it getting hot at all.
Great.
Not even a little bit. So that was hard.
Okay. So the being in the actual setting where we're dealing with some really headline grabbing things, obviously this stuff is still happening in terms of racism, in terms of violence and everything. How do you allow that to kind of infiltrate the work? What's going on in the real world around the show that you're making that is dealing in very real things?
Absolutely. If we didn't, then it wouldn't be as real as it is. Okay. That's the entire basis of the show, is that we're talking about our actual socio-political climate, and if we didn't, then there wouldn't be a show. Yeah. Just pretty much if there were any new rulings, if anything new happened in the media or socially, we made sure to incorporate that or to be mindful of it as the scripts evolved. It wasn't like, okay, this is the script, regardless of what happens in the world, this is it. We changed as the world changed. Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like it's an intention for you to take these roles now that are a little bit more topical, that do have a little bit more to say?
Even when I was doing, those student short films that still hold a very special place in my heart, I found that I was always drawn to the work that said more. topics that are a little bit more uncomfortable that we don't talk about. It wasn't always racial, but it might have been something about kids in foster systems. It was something that pulled on my heart. I feel like I think people get stuck in this mediocre mindset sometimes when in terms of auditioning or in terms of being an actor, and they're like, well, I just need the job. And although I definitely am at that place because rent, I still have it in me where I'm like, if I don't care about it, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
And that's the truth. I think you have to have your heart in it. In terms of longevity, your heart has to be in it. And if you're not doing projects you don't care about, I don't think you have any business doing them. Like there's been times where I'm like, you know what? I want to do something fun. Like, where's the sketch comedy at? And then, you go do it. Like, you just have to stay present and be mindful of where your mindset is and where your heart is at the time. But I mean, I would love to do like To All the Boys I've Loved Before. Something cute, like some Netflix
Very different tone
teenage
from
romance movie. Something fun like that.
And I mean, I did want to ask you kind of how this project affected or maybe raised the bar or just affected what you do look at next. But if you want to stay present, maybe you can't think too far ahead.
No, yeah, don't think too far ahead. Because I'm an actor. My mood changes with the wind, I never know what I'm feeling. We'll find out together. Well, so that's pretty much the life. But I do have goals. Like, I know that I don't know when I'll ever be in the shape to do that, but like a teenage Nikita, I have it imagined in my head. I want to play roles that I might never play in life. Like, that's something I loved about Jira. When you first see her, she's doing like neurosurgery on her iPad because she wants to become a trauma surgeon like her father, and that ain't me. And that'd be fun to do.
How do you feel like the process of the show, the character of Jira changed you?
This feels important, so I gotta take a minute, I think it made me more thankful for my circumstances. What I didn't know prior to booking the role is that it was gonna get very hard. And I don't know, sometimes I would wake up and I was like, I don't know that I want to be on a show that's gonna talk this much about race or about misogyny or these things that are very real. A lot of us look to entertainment for an escape. I'm like, where's Star Wars at? Where's Star Trek? Like, why can't I do something like that? And then I realized I'm part of a generation that wants to talk about these things. I'm not going to run away from that. It is hard, and sometimes you do shed a couple tears, but I think what's amazing about the Red Line is you're seeing it from the point of view of a family or of friends that becoming this family, and that makes it so much more easier and tugs on your heart more. It's not just this political nonsense that we're just throwing at you to show how awful everything is. We can do better, and it's not just you or me, it's all of us.
I mean, and it makes a really good point because it feels like as terrible as the circumstances were that started the show, in a way there's some wins throughout. And the end almost feels, depending on whose story you look most closely at, it could be a very hopeful ending.
Absolutely. It was always supposed to be a show about healing and about love and about what happens when we come together and what happens when we need to be by ourselves a little bit just to figure out what we really need, and then going to get that. Especially with Jira, she's a kid. She's like 17, and she's like, this is not okay. Yeah. These circumstances aren't cool. I don't like it, and this is what I need to make me better. And especially to play a teenager like that, especially a female teenager who's like, I know what I need. I don't need someone else to tell me what I need. That's extremely important.
Yeah, I mean, it really seemed like she had it very much together from the start. And I mean, I know there's a time, passage of time in the show where we're not with them through each step of that grieving process. And I'm sure there are times that she falls apart that we don't see, but it seems like she very much knew what she wanted, went for it. Got it.
Everything was one step after the other. She's left brain. She's A plus B equals C. She's not going to sit in any emotion and sulk for too long. She understands that her father is gone, and she understands their circumstances under which he was gone. But now she needs to know why that happened. And she's like, who's going to help me understand this? Someone who looks like me better than the person who created me. And so she has this thought process that logically is is so sound, is perfect, until you get there and you're like, wait, you're a whole person. You have a kid and a husband. You aren't still like the 15-year-old person who had me. And, you know, she deals with those emotional turns and twists, but she's originally very just logically plans it out and goes for it.
And I mean, she takes it all, I think, in great stride. Like, she welcomes her mother into her life, Tia into her life, and at the same time she accepts Tia's family. And
absolutely.
Did any of that feel like things you kind of had to work to understand, or was it just once you know Jira, you understand all of her decisions?
Once I knew that Jira was one thing after the other in terms of the way she plans stuff out, it was easy, because she's not gonna go, okay, I got this, I'm satisfied. She's like, what's next? What can we do to make life better for everyone? Now that I'm okay, how's everyone else feeling? And I think that's so important, and that's why I like playing her. She's not just thinking of herself. She thinks of, you know, immediately what do I need for my sense of security, and then she's like, now how can we give other people more understanding and more healing too?
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I mentioned it a second ago, just the passage of time, the things that we don't see. Were there things that you didn't see on screen in the scripts from her that you did need to go to directors, writers, and say, I need a little bit more of what she just went through that will inform where she is now?
No.
That's like a feather in the cap of everybody.
The truth is, I think part of my job is coming with my own, you know, for like all the actors, before you do a scene, you're supposed to have a moment before. Like, I always had my moment before everything. And for me, just because she's a teenager, her moment before in my head is sleep. Just sleep. Like, those 4 months between the shooting and her, you know, going to school was sleep. And then a little bit in between that, like a little bit of, North Shore Adoption Agency, what is that? And how do I find my birth mom? So between sleeping and researching her mother, that was pretty much all I needed to be like, I know where she's at mentally.
And we keep talking about Tia, and we talked about Noah, obviously, and like the bond you had to create with him. Let's flip that around on Emmy Otzi and talk a little bit about, because there is distance at first, obviously, with them as well. So did you find that you worked very similarly to the way that you worked with Noah with her?
I think we were even more distant with each other. On her part, she very much didn't want to create too much of a relationship in person until we met in the show.
Okay.
That was my first time ever dealing with that. And I was like, oh, you're like method, huh? Like you have like a whole process, don't you? Which, you know, because every actor has their different way of preparation. And I was like, I didn't understand it at first, but as we began to do it more and more, and once we actually did meet, I was like, oh, I understand why you wanted that now. But after we met, again, she became another one of my mothers.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, we also touched on this a second ago, just in terms of the ending being a little bit more hopeful. And, you know, in a sense, there's a win. They get the money. Yes, Tia gets her job. I know it's a limited series, and so, you know, we're going to say goodbye to these characters. But at the same time, do you think about Jira's future? Do you think about, like, what this world looks like for her and what she could do?
Every day.
So you don't shake the character is really what I'm asking.
Okay. No, I don't. The show premiered like 4 months once we finished shooting it. So I basically had her in my head every day then. And then the 4 weeks the show was on the air, and even now she's still a daily thought. She's the most recent character I've played. Yeah. And she's always, I've never had to be this vulnerable or honest in my life for a role, regardless of all the dramatic projects I've done. So she's always going to have some place in me as the first and first real thing that I've ever done. But no, I think of her as a trauma surgeon like her dad. I really do all the time. I think of her at uni studying.
Are there things that you feel like you would take from a character like her to another role?
The tenacity, the fire. I've always referred to Jira as a force of nature, and I think those are the roles that matter most to me, especially in terms of like young Hollywood. I think even in 2019, in terms of playing a woman under like 30 or like 25, teenage characters are still seen as projects, I guess, in my head. Is they don't know that they're smart until the teacher tells them they're smart. She doesn't know that she's cute until the boy that she's crushing on tells her she's cute. And I personally like playing characters who don't care and who are like, I know I'm cute, move. Like I want to play especially like young female characters like that, because there aren't a lot of them. And Jira, I think that's what had me so in love with Jira in the first place, was she didn't need anyone to tell her what she needed. She figured it out on her own. And when that didn't plan out the way she wanted it to, she maneuvered, got right back up, and figured out something else. And I want to continue to play, especially young people like that.
How easy is that when you read scripts to find?
It's not. Most scripts, like I said, it's they're trying to teach some young person some lesson. And although I'm not saying we have it all figured out, because I definitely don't, but I think especially my generation, we're hungry for knowledge, and we have vision. I was just talking with someone just before this about her son, who has this vision board, and he was doing the same thing I was doing. I would like to buy a house like December-ish. I cannot afford a $5, $10, $20 million house, but for the past 4 months, because I know I want to buy a house at the end of this year, I have toured homes all over from Calabasas to Encino, Glendale, that are like $20 million. And I'm always like, yes, my budget is like under 35 mil. What can you show me? You know, and I love that. I'm part of this generation that's like, I may not have it yet, but I promise you I will. And we just have this vision and this fire in us. And although we are hungry for the knowledge and for the wisdom that we can only get from older sources, our parents, our guardians, our teachers, we're hungry for getting that knowledge ourselves. And that is extremely important in a youth.
So in speaking to kind of, I don't have it now, but I will, and if you're not seeing these roles being written, do you think about maybe that's an area I need to step into?
I think about producing. I definitely want to take my company and make it a massive production company in which I invest in films and television series that have topical things that I care about. But I came in this business as an actor, and I'm so satisfied with that. As much as I would love to be like, yeah, I can write my own words, I kind of need them handed to me, and then I can work with it from there. I really enjoy being an actor.
Okay. We're going to take a few audience questions, but first I do want to read this message because unfortunately Noah couldn't make it tonight, which I know you can see that. But he did want to send his love, and we wanted to point that out. He thanks you for all of your support during this incredible series and throughout his career. And we obviously want to thank Aliyah for being here. But I do want to take some questions from you guys for her before we have to wrap this up. So one is, what do you know now in your career that if there's what you know now in your career, is there anything that you would have done differently at the start?
Been more picky. And that's a weird thing. I feel like, and to this day, I still get people who are like, take every single job you can, just get your name out there, just do this, pay your rent. and I'm realizing the more people I talk with is that is how you kind of get stuck in the, I did this, it happened. What's next? What's the next job? And I don't want to live my life that way. I don't ever want to say that I did it just to do it, just because it was there. Like I said, I want to do projects I care about, and there were plenty of projects that I did not need to be a part of, that I was a part of because someone told me this is what you're supposed to do. There's a lot of things in this industry that this is what you're supposed to do, and the truth is you can do whatever the hell you want to do, because the only person who has to answer for your career is you. No one else will be questioned about anything you do. It's just you. And again, take all the wisdom you can and all the knowledge and watch your surroundings and what happens. But at the end of the day, the decision is yours because the career is yours.
Mm-hmm. And bringing it back to the red line, how did you maintain such a complex character over the course of filming, especially given that you don't shoot linearly? Mm-hmm. Any tips, tricks on how you stay in character?
Find something that immediately connects you to the role. Like I said, for me, because I used Easy by the Commodores to get me into that zone during the audition process, every time I was on set and I was like, I need a little extra depth, I would find some isolation and listen to the song, and it would trigger things that I remember happened during the audition process that I forgot because I've rehearsed the scene a million times, and it became so repetitive that I forgot about this one spontaneous moment that I had until I heard one of the lines in the song and it clicked again. Find something that will always connect you to the role wherever you are, and that's also how it stays with you.
And what did you learn from this project or the experience that you feel like will help you the most in your future projects?
There's power in being a gentle giant. That's what I will say. When I first started doing ADR for the show, especially that scene on the platform that I always like to go back to, the one where I'm like, it never would have happened to you. You have no idea what it's like to be dealing with this. I went for Noah's gut when we shot that. And it wasn't just like screaming or being loud for no reason, but it was very gut-wrenching, and we had everyone behind the cameras crying. And when I saw the take that they had chosen, it was like the first take that we'd shot, which of course you're not as warmed up, and it was much more gentle, and I was like, oh, but where's the one where like I almost cut him? Like, I was like, where's that take at? That was like my best take. And the truth is, if you come at everyone that hard all the time, especially with issues like this, no one's going to receive it. And of course, that was something that I had to learn from being on the show. I can say all day, like, I want to do that really hard stuff. But if I don't know how to make it palatable for people to receive it, then there's no point in doing the work anyway. And seeing the takes that they chose, and without me going, hey, why did you choose this? And watching the series and being like, oh, this makes so much more sense. It helped me understand that you don't always need to yell something or scream it for people to get the message. There's power in some internal brokenness that transfers through the camera without you needing to be aggressive about it.
In speaking to some of that reactionary, because you just said something I thought was really interesting about, like, you know, sometimes if you are that loud about it, nobody receives it. Let's talk a little bit about the reaction to the show. I mean, do you feel like people see you in a new light now within the industry, within your audience, based on some of the things that you had to do?
This is the first role, like I said, that's major for me, and the one that I've had that had the most depth. And I feel like I've been doing this since I was 11, and so for a good 7-8 years, I've been trying to convince people that I'm good at what I do. And I felt like when this show came out, now I don't need to prove anything anymore. People are gonna know it's very simple now. And I did not get that satisfaction. And it was a weird feeling. I was like, did I really do anything? Or it was that moment of processing it, and that really humbling thing that was like, there's more to do. It's not just I'm gonna get that one big role and everyone's gonna see that I'm not just talking about, like, I don't just cry on cue. I promise it's coming from a real place. It wasn't like that. There's more to do. There's more to talk about. There's more roles out there. It's not always going to be about proving something to people that I've been trying to prove for a very long time. Because until you're on a show that's on TV, or until you're in a film that's in theaters, if you're walking around LA and you tell someone you're an actor, they're like, oh, that's cute. That's so sweet. Good for you. Like, oh my God. And then if they don't see that, it's, oh, what are you working on? And when you don't have an answer to that, when you go, oh, I'm auditioning, it's the worst feeling. And I swore getting this, I was like, it's going to be great. I'm going to be able to stay. It's on CBS at 8 on Sundays. And that became, it wasn't so important anymore. I really found out what my value is outside of whether or not I'm currently on the air. And that's really important to learn.
So what do you feel like you still have left to do to prove to people? Or do you feel like you have to prove to people?
No. I'm at the place where I know my value, whether I'm on camera or not. whether I'm auditioning or whether I'm literally performing it. And that has taught me to know my worth. Because dealing with the rejection got easier since I've been doing it since I was a kid. It got easier. It was like, okay, I'm not going to get this. Duh. But there's something more significant when you're on something and it's still not like this giant moment that everyone tries to make it seem like it is. Like I said, there's more to do. I don't want to just be Jira. I want to be so many other people. And I still have so many other people to connect with and share stories with.
Excellent. Well, thank you for coming tonight and sharing your story with us. Thank you guys for coming as well.